Welcome to the ABSL Western Balkans Conference in 2025. Here today with us is Paulo Rodrigues, the RECONOMY Program Manager. Welcome, Paulo.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Pleasure to be here.
So RECONOMY operates across many countries in the Western Balkans. And what are some common systemic obstacles that you've encountered when you're promoting green jobs, and how have you personally addressed them?
That's a big question. I think that we've encountered many different systemic obstacles to the development of the given sectors where we operate. But I can give you some examples of commonalities. We've understood in many of the sectors in which RECONOMY operates that there is a mismatch between the skills that are demanded by the market and the skills that the labor force offers to the market. And in many times there's also a mismatch in the simple point of intermediation between these supply and demand of jobs, if you want. But we've encountered more obstacles. We've encountered that many times private sector companies have difficulties to grow their business, lack support, lack regulatory environments that allow them to grow and to expand and to export and to foment trade with other countries. And many of these obstacles combined create a systemic difficulty in generating inclusive opportunities for people to access jobs. And then if you add different lenses to it, you can get to the point that if you're a woman from rural areas, if you're a person with disabilities, all these are compounding factors that create further difficulties in finding employment opportunity in the region. So a lot of different things, but systemically not an inviting system for the development of private sector and for the development of job opportunities for youth and women.
Certainly, so a lot of different things really do go into it. And could you describe one project under RECONOMY that has particularly had a strong influence locally, perhaps where the outcomes maybe even surprised you?
I mean, in a way, I think that we're having good results with the different projects that we operate, and we have different projects that link to different sectors. So we work on ICT BPO, for example, with ABSL. I think it's a good example of super interesting results. Maybe not so much in terms of quantifying yet the additional jobs created or additionality of income that we were able to provide to our target group, but definitely a lot of super interesting outcomes when it comes to the regional collaboration, to fomenting partnerships, and to working with different actors. I mean, I could give you other examples, but also super interesting to see the results that we're having on the textile industry, more in the Eastern Partnership region, but they're supporting circular business models, helping companies transition to a more circular approach, obtaining certification that allows them to export then to European markets, has proven super valuable in terms of job creation, and with the added benefit that here we're talking that most jobs are then taken by women, and many times women from rural areas, supporting also the economic empowerment of women in this region, and having super valuable outcomes when it comes to society in general. So I think that would be also a very interesting example of good results that we're having with RECONOMY.
Definitely, yes. And thank you so much for bringing up partnerships, because they seem to be really central to RECONOMY's model. And what would you say that makes a particular partnership effective in your experience? And can you give an example of one that worked very well?
Yes, I think that there are fundamentals and there are building blocks that you need to have in place for a partnership to work. And I think that then these building blocks are transversal to all the kinds of partners that you might have. So in RECONOMY, we partner with a lot of different organizations that go from public institutions to local private sector companies to industry associations, chambers of commerce, but also global private sector companies like Volvo, for example, with whom we are working. I think that fundamentally we need to have a very solid understanding of what are the non-negotiables in terms of values and in terms of objectives that we have for the partnership. It's okay if our end of the day objectives don't really match in terms of what are the KPIs that we measure the success of our interventions, but we need to have a strong commitment in believing in the fundamentals, and that is that we want to promote employment, we want to promote better jobs, and that's a non-negotiable for us. And so when we go to partnerships with this kind of logic, and we understand very clearly what are the objectives from the different partners, I think that sets the foundation for then the success of the partnership. Then of course you need to have your monitoring and keeping a close contact with all the partners, and it's not always easy for us as being a regional project to keep a very close working relation with all the different partners. But I think that technology today also helps in that regard, and with digitalization, with the tools that we have at our disposal, it makes a program like RECONOMY a possibility, whereas possibly 10 or 15 years ago it would have been way harder to implement a project like the one we do at the moment.
So it's really a complex process, but believing in a common goal is what gets us through it.
I would say so, yes.
Yeah. So talking about women and youth in rural or undeserved areas, what kind of skills or education models do you believe are most promising to prepare them for decent green or digital work?
Well, I think that the models aren't necessarily different just because of the geographic location of the individual, but I think it's very important that we look at it from a holistic perspective. We try to understand not just what are the blocks in terms of knowledge that the labor force might have and that is impeding their access to the labor market, but also trying to understand what are the constraints from the market side to employ people, what are the constraints perhaps also in the wider regulatory environment that are impeding businesses to grow and with that employ more people. So I think it's very important to us that when we analyze a given situation, we don't just act on the first impulse or on the first symptom that we see of dysfunction, but that we try to analyze the whole system. Now, having said that, I think that it's very important that, and we see that a lot in the Western Balkans, I mentioned it at the beginning, that there is a mismatch between supply and demand when it comes to the labor market. And it's very important, and this is nothing new. Many development projects have been working on this for a number of years, but it's still a process that it's slow and it takes time until we get results. I think the situation is already much better, but there's still improvement to be had. And I think that there needs to be an approximation of the training institutions, of schools, of universities, of technical training institutions to the market, to private sector, having also the private sector intervening in situations where potentially there's lack of resources in schools. And I think that a lot can be achieved through this approximation. This would bring schools forming students to access the labor market with different conditions, and will also allow then the private sector companies to be more productive, to increase productivity, and with that also increase revenues, grow their business, and employ more people. We have a super interesting partnership with the Volvo Group on this topic. Also here in Bosnia, we are supporting a school with equipment. The Volvo Group supports the school by providing engines, gearboxes, and materials with which students can form themselves and can acquire knowledge. And with that, companies like Volvo, their maintenance centers in the country will have more qualified supply of labor. But coming back to the values question, I think this is a very important point, and to give you an example of what I meant before with the basic or the foundational match in values, it has been clear for us in our partnership with the Volvo Group, for example, that it is not, we're not doing this just for the sole success of Volvo. Volvo competitors, other companies will have also benefits from this, from this labor force with increased capacity, and that needs to be completely fine. It would be a deal breaker for us if the Volvo Group would only look at this from the perspective of generating own benefits.
Course,
there needs to be a societal
picture,
benefit as well in the situation, and that I think is a very good example of the matching in terms of objectives, but also then of the societal values that we want our projects to have.
Very interesting. Thank you so much for sharing that example and the story about Volvo. I'm glad that there is progress being made here. Now looking ahead, what policy or institutional shifts do you believe would make the biggest difference for sustainable and inclusive economy growth in this Western Balkans regions?
I think that a lot of progress has been made. There's a lot of progress to be done as well. I think that the whole approximation to the European Union, to the European Union standards, is very beneficial for the economic environment of the Western Balkans in particular. I think, as I said, a lot of progress has been made. There is still a lot to do. I think we've heard here today in the conference as well references to trade and to the blockages of trade, namely in the borders and the time it takes for goods to go through the borders of the different countries in the Western Balkans. There are improvements to be done there. And with that, I think also the economies of the different individual countries can benefit and can create then a positive momentum and a loop that will create also more opportunities for the youth in the region. Yes.
Hopefully, yes. And to finish off on a more personal note, what would you say that motivates you in doing work at the intersection of development, environment, and inclusion?
I think that was a very good question. I think that I'm a strong believer of green business development as not just the right thing to do, but also as a super interesting business opportunity, an economic opportunity for the different actors in the field. And I like working in this space, and I like motivating, working with businesses, with associations, with schools, with governments on this topic, and understanding together what are the best ways of sustainably and inclusively promoting economic growth that will leave a better starting point to the next generations as the starting point we had when we started our careers.
Excellent. Thank you so much for this talk, Paulo.
Thank you very much.